My buddy Noah Kagan started AppSumo, and they would sell a few here and there. And then I came in and I was just like, dude, you got to apply this copywriting stuff. Let me try writing one of these. And I sent it out, and that was their first $10,000 profit day. And we're kind of like, wait, was that a fluke? Can we do that again? And so we did it again and again. It was not a fluke. I'm just saying most people do such a bad job of selling. We sold so many more when I started understanding that you can use these for a lot of different things.
Tell me about ADA. I love ADA.
Attention, interest, desire, action. That's what every single AppSumo email was based on. We write all these emails for Fortune 500 companies. That's what they're all based on. I see the basic psychological framework of ADA in almost everything. And it's the only copywriting formula to learn. There's literally 7 stories in the whole world that everyone just repeats. If you're going to use ChatGPT, use ChatGPT projects.
Have you ever wanted to sell anything? Have you ever wanted to make money? Well, the pen is mightier than the sword, as they say. So what if you could learn almost everything you would ever want to know about amazing tactical sales copywriting in one short episode? Well, today is the day for you, because I brought on my new friend Neville, and he is one of the world's foremost experts on copywriting. What is copywriting? It's writing to sell something in an email, on a letter, on a landing page, anywhere. It works, and he's the best in the biz. Please enjoy. Now, when it comes to copywriting, I'm sure you could talk for hours about this, but what's the 80-20 of good copywriting?
So you just said you were doing a My First Million episode with Sam. So we'll talk about that. I think Sam's a great copywriter. I think he's really good, even though he's not considered a quote unquote copywriter. And one of the things he loves doing and has always done very well is on his sales pages, it'll have like, about us and this and all the different sections on a sales page. So he's writing one for Hampton. He's really good about putting a personal note from himself. And the way he writes that is just like he would say it in the moment. So me and him bounce copywriting ideas off of each other all the time. So me and him were in Central Park 2 weeks ago, just chatting on a bench. He was just like, dude, I want Hampton is like, and he just went on this rant and it was kind of epic. And I was like, dude, that's the note right there. You nailed it. Like write that down. Immediately pulls out his phone, writes down everything he can as verbatim as he could. And if you, on their next couple of ads, that will be the primary thing on the webpage. And so I don't think using fancy language and everything is very useful anymore. And just that personal plain English sounding stuff, honestly, where you're just talking is probably the best writing out there. It's very, very simple.
Which is the opposite of what we learned in high school, right?
Very opposite of what we learned in high school. Fortunately, I do think a lot of that is going out the window now that like AI and stuff is there, that people are like, kids aren't learning how to write an essay. It's just like, why do they need to learn how to write an essay like that? Well, what's the point? Like in your real life, do you need to learn how to write essays that well? And so those old school essays, I think, are just kind of falling out the window. But from my generation, I know a lot of people learn like, to whom it may concern, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And they write that really, really boring text. And I think that's out on the way out, fortunately.
What are some examples that you can think of that where good copywriting changed everything, right? Like it was the difference between, 100 sales and 10,000 sales. Do you A/B test it that often? Or like what kind of anecdotal stories can you think of?
Yeah, some of the biggest A/B tests is when I come in with an existing email list. So they have some pre-existing sales, right? The best example was this was my first. It was when AppSumo started. My buddy Noah Kagan started AppSumo, had about 50,000 people on an email list to get deals for tech stuff. It was that simple. And they would sell a few here and there. And then I came in and I was just like, dude, you got to apply this copywriting stuff. Like you have these good deals, but like you don't talk about it. You don't tell people how to use the product. He's like, I mean, do people want to know that? And I was like, let me try writing one of these. And I sent it out, and that was their first $10,000 profit day after that email. Keep in mind, they were making like $1,000 in profit from each email before. So that was a 10x result. And we're kind of like, wait, was that a fluke? Can we do that again? And so we did it again and again. It was not a fluke. It worked really well. But here's the thing about it. Here's the insidious thing. And let me relate it to this. You go to restaurants, right? Are you a big foodie or no?
Oh, huge foodie. Huge
foodie. Okay. So I'm not that big of a foodie. I'll go to restaurants at people's suggestion. I'm never like, I want to go to a restaurant guy. So whenever we go, do you talk to the chef and give them feedback?
No, I'm an introvert. I just want to eat. I don't even want to talk to my server.
That's interesting. Okay. So you're a huge foodie. If you were giving recommendations to people because you're a big foodie, a lot of people would come and they get thousands of dollars of business. However, if you don't really love the food, won't ever tell them that.
Yeah, correct.
Don't you think that that's a pretty dangerous thing? So like you, who could be maybe a small food influencer within your friends, Do never tell the chef that the something sucks. You never tell the owner that, you know, the service was bad or whatever, that the chair was squeaky or that the sauce was too saucy, whatever it is. You never tell them that. So I think an email list is exactly the same way. If the email list is not that great to where you don't read it all the time, you just get in this habit of never reading it and eventually unsubscribing. And the thing is, no one ever tells you that. So no one ever said, you send out your ChatGPT newsletters and everyone's like, oh, cool, newsletter, whatever. But they never say anything bad. And I think that's the worst thing that can happen. It's like a selection dangerous bias. Thing. Yeah. For writing really, really good copy, what you notice is like over the long run, people will still reply to newsletters, still read it, still be influenced by it versus newsletters that have been going out for 10 years and it's like no one's reading it at all. That's a big difference. And how can you tell? It's very, very difficult to track that. You can't.
Oh, it's so funny you say this because my wife and I we found a nice Italian restaurant we'd never been to, 4.7 stars on Google out of 1,000 reviews. You know, we had positive confirmation bias at the yin yang. We sit down, we're expecting something amazing. Everything was bland, everything. And like my framework for food is like salt throughout all the processes of cooking it fixes like a multitude of sins. Just salt. That's it. That's it. And every single thing we got was just no salt, no salt. And how many compliments does that chef get on a regular basis? Probably tons, right? But if I would have gone back there and said, listen, dude, I'm not a chef, you're a chef, but I know good food and you're missing salt. Like you just need to add more salt. That would probably stand out more to him and maybe even effectuate change than any of the compliments he'd ever gotten, right? It would just kind of be a burr in his side and he'd think about it because people give me feedback about my content sometimes. And whenever I get a piece of feedback that stands out for better or worse, like a lot of times it effectuates change, even if it's not like a representative sample size. Like I send a newsletter, 100 people are like, this was a banger. And then one person's like, dude, I can tell on this section, you mailed it in with ChatGPT. I don't appreciate that. I'd probably think twice about it and not do that again because of the one guy, you know?
It's really hard to get that type of feedback. And then if you ask for feedback from 100 different people, they're going to give you all sorts of different stuff, especially something as subjective as food. So it is difficult. And then with your newsletter, with your marketing, people never tell you. They're probably just like, it's fine. But that's it. And I think that's like the most dangerous place to be, even though that's why it's so insidious. Like it's so dangerous to your business because over time, just like quality goes down. That's one of the ways where like when you see someone who really slaves over their copy and putting stuff out, like just people read it for the long term because they can tell like this is real.
Real quick, please subscribe to my channel. I know it's kind of lame to ask, but it means a lot. Thanks.
You know, it's an interesting thing I've been going back to with AI. I used to draw, I don't know if you, way back in the day, copywriting course was spelled with K's. I just couldn't.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And it was really fun because I had like the copywriting course community and which had an acronym that people didn't like. I was like, look at me. It's a joke, right? Yeah.
It's a bit.
But, and the thing is like, I thought it was fun, right? I thought it was funny. It was stupid. I liked teaching people with like dumb ways that are just like, hello, welcome to copywriting course. That's just boring. In fact, I made a copywriting course for business where I like dressed in a suit and re-recorded the entire thing. And it completely flopped. Companies were like, no, we want the stupid stuff. That's why we're going to you. Like, you're not a professional guy. Don't be professional. And anytime I'm trying to teach people something, I try to be a little bit funny and a little bit wacky. And so therefore I was using a lot of stick figures back in the day. That's just how I drew.
It's like wait, but why? That's what it reminds me of.
Everyone says that. And guess what? I love wait, but why? It's very wait, but why. If you know what that is, that's a lot my style as well. Just like stick figures and stuff like that. And over time, I started kind of like cleaning it up because now I had tools like Canva. You have ChatGPT that can make images for you. And I started going like, let me start using these tools more and more. The problem is it just kind of lost some of that spark, some of that magic. And so I've started going back to stupid drawings, hand drawn, get the iPad out, just drawing it a bunch of times. And it's kind of funny. You mentioned Sam before. Guess what we were doing on our last call together? We were doodling for Hampton. He made some doodles. He's like, how do you make these doodles like that? So we doodled for Hampton and I showed him my whole process of that. So actually going back to like goofy to where it's just like, this is so stupid AI wouldn't have made it. Yeah. It's kind of the move, I think, right now to more than ever human. Ironically, going back to that stupidity is better. There was this phase where like professional was really cool. You're on YouTube a lot. I'm sure you noticed these trends with YouTube over time. It used to be Casey Neistat vlogging all the time, every day. that totally dropped off. And then I think it's coming back now. All these things go in cycles. So going back to the old school hand-drawn, handwritten stuff, I think will be a major advantage in the near future.
Is there any chance you still have that first AppSumo email that you sent out so we could break it down and what made it interesting?
The first one?
For those unfamiliar with AppSumo, it's kind of like Groupon for like tech deals, right? Like lifetime deals. They'll send out one email to their whole list. And instead of paying $30 a month for something, you pay like $50 for a lifetime deal, right?
Yeah.
Is that accurate? Okay.
So believe it or not, this is for designers, right? So the deal that they gave me was kind of like this one they thought was like a throwaway deal. Okay. They didn't think it would make that much because it was a pack of fonts. Okay. It was this font subscription service. You sign up and they would send you like pairings of fonts. This is for hardcore designers. Now, what I knew was just like, okay, the general public does not need this. There's zero chance anyone would need this. However, if you're a hardcore designer, this would make a lot of sense to you. So I started off with like, if the names Lucidia Sans Unicode or Courier New don't mean anything to you, go ahead and close this message.
Yeah. You're just like bold. And like, even if it doesn't mean anything to them, people keep reading because they're curious, like where you're going with this.
Exactly. And I said, you see, my friend, today we're reaching out to the community, people known as font fanatics. I actually wanted to say font because there's like, that's what they were
like,
called.
Nope, we're not doing that.
I think Noah was okay with it. I think some other people on the team were like, the word is aggressive to start with.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if your knees go weak when I whisper Garamond, you might be one of them. Right. And then I described like Steve Jobs always talked about font faces and stuff like that. And I was a big Steve Jobs fan. And so I included a quote of his. And then I go into, Koerner. And there's this guy, Koerner, who like delivers these cool font packages that all these designers used. And so most of this was about fonts, why they play a role in web design and why typography is so important. And then at the end, we said, oh, by the way, we have a deal on this, right? So it's $180 a year, but if you buy right now, it's whatever dollars. And that was the whole email. There was no pictures, there was no nothing. It was just so jarringly different at the time, right? So now this might not be the most groundbreaking thing on the planet, but at the time, people were like, oh my, I can't. Like this right here, we convinced Koerner, and I underlined the K.
K,
and then the K, that people were like, what? Like, I've never seen something like that. And so those types of things, just like being so outlandish and unique, were quite a weapon back then. And so still to this day, I think the way to approach this is like, if you write stuff like this, it just does not look like AI. It doesn't feel like it. You're just like, this feels something different.
Yeah.
And if I were to do this again today, I'd probably have a bunch of hand-drawn pictures in there as well.
Okay. I feel like this template could be used for so many other launches or things or anything. Like
this is basically an Ada template. So
I was going to ask you about Ada. You got ahead of me. Tell me about Ada. I love Ada.
Attention, interest, desire, action. That's what every single AppSumo email was based on. It's all my sales emails. We write all these emails for Fortune 500 companies. That's what they're all based on. And instead of coming up with an argument of why someone should buy something, you have this framework to go off of. Get their attention, what's something interesting about it, interesting facts, interesting testimonials, interesting use cases, desire, making them show, like, if you buy this, your life will be better because, and then action, like telling them how to buy, right? And so that framework is an easy skeleton you can make for a sales page, for an email, for any sort of pitch, for telling your kids to clean their room, right? So anytime you have an argument to make or a sale to make, instead of just saying like, go clean your room, you can start off with like, hey buddy, you want to go to Astroworld today, right? Like, well, let me tell you that if you clean your room, it's going to make me and your mom really, really, really happy. And we're gonna be very happy with you. So we're going to take you there. We're going to buy you ice cream. We're going to do everything. So if you clean your room, I mean, we'll go to Astro. We're packing up the car and we're going to go in 10 minutes. But if you don't, we can't do it. So this is his desire to go. And so it's like, all right, ready? Like on the count of 3, you're going to go run in there and clean your room as fast as you can. Action.
That's the call to action. Yeah.
Yeah. Lamest example in the world. I'm just kind of making up that as we go. But it's this framework that when you start to have that framework in your mind, every time you're trying to ask someone something, you go, how can I just Ada this real quick? And then you have a much better framework and a much higher chance of getting them to do said action.
The interest is the hardest part for me. In your example, where was the I?
Yeah, everyone gets I and D confused. Interest and desire. Interest is like interested with interesting use cases, interesting facts about the product, interesting ways that people have made money with the product, interesting testimonials. The desire is like, if you buy this Roomba vacuum, you'll never have to vacuum again, right? So it's like what their life will be like with that product.
Yeah.
So that's the main difference. A lot of times the interest section is bullet points. For example, one of my first things I applied on House of Rave was when I started like ADAing all the sales pitches, was I was selling these things called finger lights. And I got a couple of plumbing companies buying a bunch of them. And I thought they were like fake orders because like from Josh's plumbing company. I'm like, the hell are they doing ordering 500 packs of these? Turns out they give them to plumbers and use them to like go under the sink and they put them on their fingers as like, because they have a headlamp, but they can't always see directly with the headlamp. And I was like, that's a freaking bullet point to put in a sales pitch somewhere that plumbing companies use these. And then it turns out parents of autistic children would use them to like, they would like wave them around. It would calm them down. There'd be all these little use cases. And that sold a ton of them because instead of just being a light for like 16-year-olds to dance at a rave, this became a thing that you can like use around the house all the time. You can use it when you went camping. You can keep a couple in your car. They're so cheap that they're just basically disposable. So making this a product that you can use in all aspects of life rather than just one specific aspect.
It reminds me of the phrase, invent the disease, sell the cure. Like you're just teaching them, hey, you have this disease, you have that disease, you can't see under the sink, you can't entertain your autistic kid. And they're just getting these ideas of why they need it as you're describing this quote disease they have. And then conveniently, the A at the end of ADA is you selling them the cure.
Yeah, we sold so many more of these when I started understanding that you can use these for a lot of different things. Another thing we sold these like light up golf balls. We called them rave balls because they were just like indestructible lights that you can sell. You could literally hit them with a golf ball 400 yards and they wouldn't break. I was just like, man, you could use these for all sorts of stuff. So I made pictures of them being used as Halloween costumes. The number one buyers of them, wedding planners. They were using them in centerpieces and stuff like that because they were water resistant. They were all these things. Yeah. So now people went from buying these just for like, once again, waving around on a dance floor to a billion other use cases. And waving around these things on a dance floor was like 1% of the people, that the total addressable market. Wedding planners spending $3,000 on them were far better customers than a guy buying one of them. Yeah. So interest is a very important thing to just put a bunch of bullet points of how people can use that product.
Bullet points. Okay. What first got you interested in copywriting and why? What was it about it that just intrigued you?
I had a business called House of Rave and it wasn't selling very well on email. In fact, I was losing money because I was making no sales on email. And I'd go to these like marketing meetups and everyone's like, your email list is your ATM machine. Like that was a big phrase. And I was like, I don't make no money off this email list. Yeah. So a buddy of mine looked at my emails and was like, dude, these like, they look cool. There's a lot of images and big buy now buttons, but you got to tell people about the product. He's like, you should check out Gary Halbert. So I read the Gary Halbert letters, chapters 1 through 25. I literally printed them out. And I instantly was like I've literally been doing this all wrong. And so that's when I redid my first email with like the Gary Halbert style. And that's when I made like way more money. And literally overnight, House of Rave turned into like an email marketing company more so than the e-commerce company that just depended on SEO.
How big was your list?
7,500 previous customers. There's 7,500 people that had previously bought from me. That was my list. So I thought everyone was like, that's a warm list. However, every time I sent out an email, it was just a bunch of pictures. They were very well done, I would say. They were visually pretty, but no one would buy anything.
I've been using Beehive for about 2 years, almost as long as they've been around. And I got to tell you, watching other creators stay stuck on basic newsletter platforms is painful. You're losing thousands of dollars because you don't know what your subscribers are worth. And when potential sponsors ask, who reads your newsletter? And you say, entrepreneurs or moms, you lost the deal. But Beehive has a survey feature that's brilliant. You can set up a few questions about demographics and spending habits that you send them through right after they subscribe. So instead of telling sponsors, oh, I have 5,000 subscribers, you can say, I have 3,750 homeowners making over $75,000 a year who spend $200 plus per month on home improvement. And that's proof that their ideal customers are reading your newsletter. Go extract your email list from whatever platform you're stuck on because it's probably costing you thousands in lost deals. Beehive makes migration easy. You can move all your emails in minutes so you can get paid what you're actually worth. Head to beehive.com/Chris for 30% off your first 3 months. That's BEEHIV.com/Chris. You'll thank me later.
So I literally just lose $80 a month for the email service.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's
when
funny.
people said you make money off emails, I was like, that doesn't seem to be true. And then when I started writing them this way, then I made money.
Yeah. We have an e-commerce brand that has like 160,000 on the email list, and we've A/B tested them a ton of different ways. And we've learned that the shorter the subject line, like you can't reveal anything in the subject line because you want them to click. You can't answer the question. And whenever we have a new product drop, we only link to it in like a blue, ugly hypertext. We put no pictures in the email. It's the ugliest looking email you've ever seen, and it just crushes.
I would say there's another way to do that. Do you mind sharing what product that is? No.
Let me share my screen. So it's at texassnacks.com. We just resell Buc-ee's products, right? So we might have a new snack or a new t-shirt. So let's say, Buc-ee's, one of their biggest drops every year is a Halloween t-shirt, and everyone looks forward to it in early August. So we'll send an email that says new Halloween shirt just dropped. That's it. That's the whole email with just a hyperlink. And we sell more and we get more clicks when we do that than if we put the picture in there.
You know what's interesting? I would say that there's another formula that you could possibly use for these. So there's like all text, which works great. I think another format that would be really fun is little text and a lot of pictures. And it goes headline, picture, repeat, right? So what I mean is check out these Buc-ee's snacks. Sorry, I probably know that's not the right spelling of Buc-ee's. I'm just going to take these. I'm going to make this a big old headline. I'm going to post this picture here. And then I'm basically just going to copy this over and over and over. They come in 4 flavors, right? Once again, steel, image, bam, bam. And then I go copy this again. My personal fave is mesquite. And so you tell a whole story almost in this like social media scrolling type way. And so you can see how this is like pretty fun to scroll down. So it's like, check out these Buc-ee snacks.
It's progressing.
Come in 4 different flavors. My personal flavor is mesquite, blah, 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 blah. And you do that 6 to 10 times. That's a pretty fun email and really easy to make. If you notice, if you take all of this text and put it together and spit it out, I mean, what are we talking? Like not even one sentence yet?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look, it's literally one line of text, but it feels like a long email.
Yeah.
So these types of emails are pretty cool. We did like these flash test sales on a bunch of different e-commerce things. This one was a best self journal, and we did like a flash sale, and it's like, get yourself journal. It comes with a guide. Every single day will get you closer towards your goal, keep momentum going. It basically explains the product in this like headline thing, headline picture style. That could be a really, really fun email for you.
Yeah, it reminds me of like one of your spammy ClickFunnels, like landing pages, right? That it's like a mile long, but you just keep scrolling. Like, why am I still scrolling?
Yeah,
because there's not a lot to read. There's a lot to look at.
Now, the goal isn't necessarily to get them to just keep scrolling. It's just to like, how can you tell a fun story? And these types of things are really fun to do, especially if you're talking about Buc-ee's Snacks, which has like a fun logo and all that kind of stuff. So like, this is a fun thing to do. And so it's like, you can buy them here. At the end, you give them a little pitch. But yeah. I think that's a great style email that has a lot of personality into it, and they're just fun and easy to read. So yeah. I know you're stuck on like that text one, but I would say like it'd be fun to try one of those.
No, how it does. I'm going to do this for sure. Like, especially for like a Halloween shirt. It's like, did you know Buc-ee's release a Halloween shirt every year? Here's 2021. Here's what 2022s look like. Here's a like what? What you already got it. Some H1s and some pictures. That's the whole thing, and a button at the bottom to buy. It's really, really simple. Where does ADA not apply, if anywhere? Like if I have a local newsletter that's just informing people about, it doesn't apply to that?
It applies to almost everything. It doesn't apply to something super, super short like a tweet. So sometimes a tweet is just like a single thought. You don't need to ADA it, right?
Yeah.
It's generally when you're trying to make a sales pitch of some sort. So if you're trying to make a novel or something like that, I don't think it really applies there. AIDA is a copywriting thing. And just remember, copywriting is when you're trying to sell something through text, right? So whenever you're trying to sell something, that really helps. Now, once again, I don't think that you have to follow AIDA necessarily. I'm just saying most people do such a bad job of selling things that AIDA probably is an upgrade compared to it.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine. He makes all these sounds that don't sound like a guitar. He's just like, I know you're supposed to just play it like this, but I want to play it doing all this stuff. It's like valid. That's fine.
Yeah.
So similar with text, you want to be all funky. That's fine. A lot of the new YouTubers that come out of nowhere, they're making videos in styles that no one's ever seen or just like are completely wacky. So it doesn't always have to be followed, but AIDA is surely a very, very helpful framework to get started.
What are some other frameworks similar to AIDA that you use?
I used to love making these framework things because people like frameworks. I will say I use no other frameworks besides AIDA. I have posts with like 40 different frameworks you can use. I don't use those. I don't personally use them. These AIDA formulas are a hotly debated content. It was like, well, what if it's AIDA PS and it has these other sections? It's like, it's just AIDA with like more stuff on it. So AIDA is the only formula I generally use. I know that sounds crazy and like a cop-out, but that's it.
No, that's amazing. Do you see AIDA when you're watching like short form videos? Like the creator probably doesn't even know they're using it. People use it by accident, I'm sure. But, you'll see a video of someone just talking in their car, giving like an opinionated, example of something an interaction they had at the grocery store. And you realize like, oh, the attention, that's the hook. Oh, the interest, that's kind of like a rehook. Oh, the desire, you know what I'm saying? Do you see it in the wild in other formats?
All the time. The desires, a lot of times those short videos aren't trying to sell you on something necessarily.
Yeah.
So the D is often not there and there's no action sometimes.
They're implicitly selling you on watching to the end. And if you do, then the algorithm's like, oh, people like this. Let's make this go viral, right?
I see the basic framework, the psychological framework of AIDA in almost everything. Yes. In a lot of good stuff you see, it's just like if you watch movies, you basically see the same 7 plot lines over and over again. There's a book called Save the Cat. That's basically like the standard screenwriting book that everyone reads. And when you see every single movie, you're like, oh, there's an orphan. He has a downfall. And then somehow he climbs himself back up the ladder.
Hero's journey.
And the hero's journey. There's literally 7 stories in the whole world that everyone just repeats. And so, yes, you see that everywhere. However, I try not to let that distract me from, sometimes I want to watch a video and have a good time. Yeah. But yeah, a lot of stuff uses AIDA, and it's probably the best formula to learn. I'd say the only copywriting formula to learn.
If someone doesn't already have a newsletter or already have a business, no email list, how can they use that first principle of AIDA to be monetized, to start a business? Like maybe something obvious, like being a consultant to small businesses, or maybe something less obvious.
A cold email or a warm email pitch, like trying to sell something right away. So writing a newsletter, I would say AIDA is not necessarily quite as strong for it because newsletters can be like Sean Puri just sends like 5 tweets he likes. Is that AIDA? I don't think so. I think it's just a collection of cool stuff. However, if he was sending out like, hey, join our thing and we'll hire you a developer for half the price it costs in the United States, using AIDA to send out an email to his list would be very beneficial and very profitable. So yes, whenever you're trying to sell something directly, I'd say AIDA is probably like the formula you need to use.
Yeah. Or sending cold emails to someone whose attention you're trying to get.
Yeah. For cold emails, I actually recommend I recommend this because cold emails, you can send multiple ones. Like that's the beauty of email. You don't just get one chance. You have multiple. So I say short, medium, long. The short one is just like, so literally Eamon, the CEO of AppSumo, would reach out and be like, hey, we have 700,000 customers who want to buy Chris software, whatever it is, in Eamon. Like that's his cold email, right? So my favorite cold email to send is one that is so painfully short. It's uncomfortably short that it seems it has to be a human sending it.
Yeah.
So,
and those are hard to write because you got to get every word right.
It's why I say painfully short. And actually the funny thing is, even with like a couple misspellings, like you don't capitalize something, the weird thing is it looks like a real human sent it. So I don't know if you've ever looked at like a CMO's inbox, but it's like just slammed with like pitches and stuff. How do you stand out? One way is writing a half sentence as a cold email. So if you start confounding on this, you say like, we get average 10 or 1,000 customers per blast. You get 70% of rev. You get SEO benefits. We will also work with you, whatever. Excuse all spelling errors just for time's sake. When you send this looks a little bit more like someone planned it out, right? So I'd say like the mid-size is probably the best type of short email. So, and then the long one, the reason I go for a long short email is because I want to cover everything you can to convince them. Because if they saw your short one didn't respond, and if beyond that one, they don't respond, the chances of them actually responding after that are very, very low. So that's when I say, when people say, what's the best type of cold email? I say, sending out one short one, one medium one, one long one to everyone. Yeah.
In that order.
In that order. Yeah.
What about like email best practices? For my newsletter, I hold that very sacred. I email them once a week. But for like my e-commerce business, I don't really care. I spam them, right? What's your opinion on like send frequency best practices for any setting?
I have one thing, 70% content, 30% sales. So frequency, it really depends. If you're a pad thai place that you visit, you're a pad thai restaurant and people come there and sign up their email for some reason, spamming them every day, does that really help or just annoy people, right? You could argue both sides. All I say is this. If you are willing to do 70% content and 30% sales, you can email them unlimited and they never get mad. And so this was the rule I made with AppSumo specifically because every single day a sale goes out. And so people were like, why do I keep reading these? It's like, well, because I include 70% content. You learn something from every email. So if they learn something, get something out of it, laugh, whatever on every single email, they don't get tired of it. If you're just like, buy this, buy this, buy this, buy this, with no fun or entertainment or learning, then people get pissed off. Yeah. So when people say frequency, I'm like, how often can you keep this up? It's kind of hard to make 70% content for every single email and then do a sale. It's easy just to like throw out a sale, especially with ChatGPT each time. So if you were to do this, you could send out every single day and people would be totally fine with it.
Are you still writing AppSumo emails?
No. I mean, we're well past that. I don't have anything day to day to do with AppSumo anymore, unless I want to. But yeah, there's also too many emails for me to handle. So that was the problem. When you start getting to an email a day, you have to hire like additional help. And so I trained all the writers and stuff. There are certain tools that just do a thing really well that everyone knows that you actually don't have to write as much, like Grammarly or something. If you were to send out, most people know what that is. And people are on the fence about buying it or not. And if they get 50% off, then they'll just buy it, right? So there are some deals where you actually don't have to write a lot. But if you go to most AppSumo deals, there'll be a whole thing on how to use it, who it's for, who it's good for. Is it good for agencies, individuals, what it does, a video going over it. There's a lot of content on each deal now. And that's very tough to make.
Have you ever seen this piece of copywriting here? I'm sure you have. It's called "They Laughed When I Sat Down at the Piano."
Oh, classic.
When I started to play. Can you break this down for us and like why this is so effective? This is like 100 years old, isn't it?
Yeah, it was written in the 20s. I believe it was like some sort of Claude Hopkins era. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not going to break down the individual thing, but let's just say in the context of the time, copywriters had to pay for every eyeball they see, right? You have to pay for newspaper ad placements. If you sent direct mail, you have to pay for the stamps, writing up the addresses, all that kind of stuff. So they had to make sure that in that newsletter, people would actually buy. And the number one thing was to get attention with the headline. I would say that's actually less important now. Well, about as important, but I'd say less in some cases. So they laughed when I sat down at the piano when I started to play. Playing the piano in the 1920s was a very in-demand skill. Remember, you couldn't just throw on the radio. You couldn't just throw on YouTube. We didn't have phones where we could just play any song. So if someone wanted to hear Jingle Bells and Merry Christmas at the holiday, someone had to play. So the value of someone being able to know how to play was like really high. And that dude was like kind of a baller, right? You're just like, oh, that guy can just sit down and play anything. That was a cool guy to have around.
Quick question. What if there were a private community out there of people that were building businesses based on this podcast? Well, I just made it. and it's only for business starters and business builders. It's called TK Owners. And it's basically like having me and 100 other business geniuses as your business partner. Also, there's going to be exclusive new trends, growth hacks, business ideas, and a database of everything I've ever talked about. You'll find thousands of startup case studies. You'll have weekly Ask Me Anythings with me while I'll answer your questions directly. You can join now at tkowners.com, link in the show notes.
So a lot of people fantasized about being the piano player guy, that you just sit down and everyone's like, you can play the piano?
Yeah.
Nowadays, you sit down and play the piano at, someone's party and they're like, shut up. I'm trying to listen to like Kendrick Lamar that's playing in the background. So just keep that in mind with the context of the time.
The context. Yeah.
Yeah. Previously, also, you had to learn without a teacher. So buying like a book on how to learn to play piano was not as common. And now someone made one. So they go through that you can teach yourself how to play, any of these instruments. But I've seen this so many times. I know the ad. Yeah, you can teach yourself to play any of these instruments by learning these simple rules and stuff like that. And then they give a free booklet and demonstration lesson, right? And then you have like the action at the bottom and you send that in. So, I mean, that was a classic ad. And when you pay $1,000 to run an ad and it returns $100,000, well, you just keep paying $1,000 to keep running that ad. And this was one of those that just like struck absolute lightning.
Yeah.
And so they kept doing it. Yeah.
It's a product market fit, basically.
Do you know about the Gary Halbert coat of arms letter?
Oh, is that like the taking your last name, making a crest out of it?
Yeah. Type in swipe file coat of arms, and I think you'll just find it. And so, what he would do is he'd type in like McDonald as a last name and be like, hey, me and my wife figured out that like McDonald has this like cool meaning. We'll send you a report and a printout of the thing. It's literally like a report on the back and the picture of the coat of arms on like a printer piece of paper. And they would just send that to you in an envelope for $2. And
our egos love it.
Yeah. And just keep in mind, this was the 70s, right? And so it's not like you exactly had access to this type of thing. And so what he would do is look up every last name McDonald in the directory and send them out to them. And they expanded that across every single thing. It got so big, and this is his side of the story. He ended up going to jail for mail fraud because he got so many complaints. Now, I'm saying Gary Halbert's side, so maybe there's another side to this. But they never had someone that got like, 1,000 complaints. So they're like, clearly this is fraud. Here's the thing. They sent out 600 million of these over the course of like 2 or 3 years. So like one for like several for every household almost over the course of years. And so if you look at percentage wise, 1,000 people out of like, millions of sales, it was actually a very, very good complaint rate. But the US Postal Service was like, what is going on over here? They just never had someone do it at this scale. Yeah. And so this one page brought in millions that's what made him a millionaire back in the day.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that wild?
Like, it's wild. And it's like Facebook ads. Like if you have an ad that crushes, you're going to show it to the same people over and over and over because it keeps crushing.
Until it doesn't.
Yeah. Eventually.
Yeah. You keep going until that number makes sense. You spend $1,000, you make 1,000 plus one, you keep doing it until it makes under that.
Yeah. What about length, right? Because on one hand of the argument, you can say, well, don't make it too long. And on the other hand, you could say, well, as long as it's good copywriting, people will keep reading. But if, the longer you make it, the harder it is to make it all good copywriting and the greater your margin for error. Where do you land on that?
Yeah. Two things. It would be long-winded is bad. Long is okay. Harry Potter book, long, good. A sales page as long as a Harry Potter book, bad, right? That's too long-winded. The other thing is long sales pages were a product from like a long time ago when browsers were slow, internet was slow, and you loaded up one page and that's like the chance you got. Or back in the day when you were trying to sell in the back of a print ad or something like that, the longer you had, the better because you explain more. But now, like for you have social media, you have Twitter, you have YouTube, you have a podcast. People listen to you in multiple different forms. So I would argue that sales pages are actually getting much shorter nowadays. They're not as long as they used to be. I don't know if you remember like 10, 15 years ago, it was kind of this trend to have like a sales page that would like nearly crash your browser because it was so long. Now you can have people browse through multiple pages. We got AMP loading. Everything's fast now. So it doesn't matter. And people see you over time. They see your Instagram stories, they see your YouTube shorts, etc. They see you multiple times. So you can contact someone 80 times before they buy their product. They're not just looking at a sales page once and you got to get it right there. And so we look at tracking for a bunch of different sales pages. I would say I have shortened all of my sales pages because people are not reading those super long sales pages as much anymore. Is this a sentiment you share? Is that your experience as well?
Totally. I tweeted a couple of years ago. It was a 1,700 word tweet. There was one picture, 1,700 words. It was a personal story. It got 1.5 million views. And it just broke my frame. I'm going to share my screen real quick. And the hook is, I just did a word count. Before you pick a business partner, read this. I know it's messed up, but you're out and we're doing this anyway. And I just outlined this story that happened to me of, getting screwed out of this business partnership, yada, yada, yada. You're not going to read it right now, and that's a picture of the Starbucks where it happened. Why do you think something like this could go so viral on Twitter, on a platform where people are consuming 280 characters at a time?
I think it's a good story. It's relatable, right?
Do you think people just want to know how it ends? So like they read to the end, therefore Twitter says, oh, there's good retention. Let's push it to more people.
I think that was a particularly good story at the right time. Like if you put a 1,700 word tweet out, just a 1,700 word tweet, would it do well? No, I don't. So I don't think the length is actually the main KPI over here. I think you wrote a really heartfelt story, right?
But how can I do that more and more without getting screwed out of more business partnerships?
Well, have you? One of my most popular AppSumo things was right after I got robbed. I got robbed once in my life, and it was like the most violating feeling. I was just every day I would go to sleep dreaming of like finding the guy and like going beating him up with a bat or something like that. Right. Like I had those like vengeance fantasies, and I wrote this story about a thing called Prey, which is like this. It's still around. It sits on your phone, like deep inside your phone, kind of like previous, like Find My iPhone is right now, but it really sits deep in the BIOS of your computer. And so no matter what they do, they can't get it off. And I was like, I should have had this. And I told that story of how I like fantasized about beating this guy up. That's how the thing started. And that ended up being one of our most popular deals. And people were like, this story is like wild. That like rawness of like feeling hurt. And I was like, I'm going to translate this into like this story that really captured people's attention. So for you, getting screwed with a business partnership probably felt a little bit raw. And that's why that did well. Now, do I think the length of it had anything to do with it? I mean, I don't know. I think just writing 1,700 words isn't like some magic number. It's just like, that was a freaking good story. I think that's why people read.
Yeah. I just assumed that the longer it was on Twitter, the lower the likelihood it would be of going viral.
I also have another theory. There are times in algorithm history where a certain thing accidentally starts getting shown a lot more. And you may have just written a really long story that people didn't want to read. And so they bookmark it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So that's why a lot of tweet threads, I'll see a tweet thread. It's like 40 tweets. I'm like, I don't want to read it right now, but I'll read it later. Bookmarking is the most powerful signal that they get, besides like reposting or something. Bookmarking is a very, very powerful signal, or sharing. And so that could be another reason. There was also a time in Twitter history, just like a few years ago, where people would screenshot a page of something and it would have a lot of text on it. And because you couldn't read it, you'd have to click on it. And because you clicked on it, that's an action. So there was a time when I was like, I'm seeing a lot of screenshots all of a sudden. And sure enough, they patch it up. And then they understand that like people literally cannot read this, so they have to click it. That doesn't mean that they like it. So it could also be one of those things.
Yeah, like many people didn't actually read it in the moment. They just signaled to Twitter that this was high quality. I'm going to get to it later. They probably never even got to it because I don't really check my bookmarks.
Other recent LinkedIn fodder, remember like after the second line, it would cut off and you'd be like, so the reason that I did that was, and you're like, oh, I got to click it. And so then all of those just like shot to the top for like a year.
Yeah. Oh, well, is there any other good like copywriting tips you could leave us with that we haven't covered? I mean, surely there's a lifetime.
If you're going to use ChatGPT, use ChatGPT projects. And Grok has projects. They all have it. And that's basically where you can actually tell it like, hey, this is my webpage. Here's things I've done. Read my blog. Anytime I write an email, make sure to relate it to one of these stories. Use real numbers and results. So for companies, when they have like a writer that's using ChatGPT, I'll say, use a ChatGPT project, upload all your images, all your PDF decks, all that kind of stuff. And whenever it makes your emails, it now actually uses real numbers and real case studies that you can use. So at least it makes it the best it can be. And as the model updates, ChatGPT 6, 7, 8 come out, it'll just get better and better with projects versus, retelling it all these things each time. So yeah, use ChatGPT projects or sign up for the copywriting course. Not only will I talk about all these types of things, but we actually have a thing if you have an email, you paste it into our community and myself and our writers go and just update it for you. That is what most people don't realize. They're just like, oh, it's just a course. I watch it. I'm like, yeah, it's like a part of it. But the main thing is literally post your social media posts. Some people post YouTube video scripts and get a whole high level overview of it from other people. And we don't generally go and do grammar and stuff. It's more like someone's making a sale and they'll be like, hey, what do you think about this flash sale email we're doing for a B2B company? And ChatGPT will just say here's how I would rewrite it. I would probably say, here's how I would rewrite it. However, let's think about this. Do most companies that do B2B stuff buy flash sales? Your lead times are 3 months to turn around a deal. Are flash sales going to be the main driver of business here? So we talk about higher level stuff like that. And I think that's where people get most of the value from posting in our community forum. And then we have office hours.
The interactive part.
So, yeah. That part's really fun. That also keeps me really sharp. It also keeps me exposed to a lot of different industries.
Okay. Copywritingcourse.com, right?
Yep. With C's, but
I'm sure your K is auto direct.
The K is on auto direct. I might move it back because I'm I'm having more fun just going back to the old school style of just with AI coming in. I'm just I'm going full silly at this point.
Yeah. I love it. All right. What'd you think? Please share it with a friend and we'll see you next time on the Koerner Office.